Good morning, I am Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you. Going to look forward to spending some time talking to you about you and your business. One of my favorite contributors, really one of my favorite people to talk to. Lee Kaplan has joined us here today. He's a regular contributor on The Price of Business, bringing some very unique insight on what's happening out there from a business perspective, a legal perspective, and even a political perspective. I love your thoughts and insights. Welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your law firm. I'm very impressed. I've spent some time checking out the website and skv.com. Tell us a little bit about the law firm there at Smizer, Kaplan, and Veselka, and your practice.
Well, our firm is what's called a litigation boutique, and we really just do lawsuits and arbitrations and appeals. All we do is litigation. And this reflects kind of a trend across the country, and particularly in Houston, as the larger law firms have moved more towards transactional work and regulatory work. There are more law firms, such as ours, that just do litigation. One reason is to avoid conflicts. But in any event, most of our lawyers work for federal judges as clerks. We're well-versed in both state and federal courts, and we show up there all the time. And we have trials and temporary injunction hearings and temporary restraining order hearings and appeals, just sort of the usual stuff for law firms that do litigation. And it ranges from trade secrets and patent lawsuits to breach of contract and fraud cases of all sorts. Usually businesses of every size have commercial disputes, and sometimes they just cannot get them resolved, and they come to law firms to solve that problem. That's what we do.
Very good. Tell a little bit, you had a topic for us before when it comes to a lawsuit. I think you said off of San Felipe. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's been in the news a lot that residents of nearby high-rises are suing. We had that Ashby lawsuit in which the court ultimately declined to grant any injunctive relief, but agreed that some homeowners who proved actual damages to their property could make a recovery. We now have two lawsuits involving a proposed high-rise on San Felipe near Kirby that's being put up by Hines, a very reputable developer. And I guess I should disclose that many years ago I did some legal work for the Hines organization. I don't do any now, and our law firm has never done any work for them. But this most recent lawsuit, which was filed just last week, is essentially an effort by someone who's a private homeowner to be the new zoning commissioner. Because from what I can tell, this building meets all the requirements. It has never been cited for any violations of the city's requirements, and they're basically saying it's going to be an eyesore. It'll block our access to light. People will disturb our enjoyment of our backyard because they can look down from the office tower into our backyard, and that is simply antithetical to what standard Houston tradition is. So
yeah,
I
think, I talked about this before, really hostile to even the concept of rule of law, because there is law that exists. We have the most liberal zoning laws of any major city in the United States. We've chosen to do that, and it really is hostile even to the idea of rule of law, don't you think?
I do think that. It's an effort perhaps to mobilize the city council into passing new ordinances that will control that, but that would have retroactive effect on this project, which has been approved, is under construction, and as best I can tell, has met all the requirements of the city. All they're saying basically is that we're entitled to monetary compensation because there's going to be pollution, noise, and ground vibration while this is being constructed, and there'll be more traffic, I guess, and a loss of sunlight on our property, and people can look into our backyard. Well, this is Houston, and when you buy a piece of property, you should be aware that if this is the case, across the street or down the street, property is not restricted to a residential subdivision, and people are entitled to put up a high-rise there, which is exactly what's happened here. And it's really just too bad. Frankly, the city needs more density to support alternative kinds of transportation, and in one sense, and also to increase our tax base. So there are pluses and minuses about this kind of urbanization, but it's not something that's illegal, not in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they want to change the law, they need to go to city council. They need to develop maybe even do one of the various mass efforts that we've tried before through petitions and ballot measures, and those have failed, haven't they?
Right. Houston has voted down zoning initiatives, many Houstonians, many times. And we have certain kinds of zoning requirements that are imposed on builders, whether it's detention ponds or parking spaces for a particular size building, that kind of thing. But when it comes to just plain old zoning, Houstonians have rejected that. We've gone with what are called restrictions, subdivision restrictions, where people in a particular area have developed a neighborhood and they essentially set out restrictions on different kinds of property and maintain it that way. And then the restrictions can be renewed if the community wants to, or not renewed.
Yeah.
And this is an effort to overturn that and essentially demand a lot of money either to derail the project by making the monetary demands so high, or essentially to get some money out of a developer, which is a type of tax through the legal system. And this is it is. And
unlike other fixed costs, it's one that could be extremely unpredictable based on who ends up overseeing that from a legal perspective. Isn't that true?
Right. Yeah.
So, that's when it becomes very difficult to build these kind of things. So what ultimately do you see end up happening here over time?
I personally think this lawsuit will be unsuccessful. I do think it will cause developers to try to spend more time in a neighborhood. They'll probably be more cautious about development, which might be a good thing or might be a bad thing for the city if people are afraid of lawsuits and have to factor that into their budgeting. But I think this lawsuit will ultimately be unsuccessful.
Yeah, very good. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for your insight. I do want to mention that you can learn more about Lee Kaplan at skv.com. skv.com. He does a phenomenal job. You can see why we get him on. My segments with you are among the fastest I do on any given show. So I'm looking at my watch, and we've actually went a little longer, which I'm always glad to do. Lee, thanks so much.
You're welcome. We'll talk
Great
soon.
Stuff. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here, including this interview, can be found over there at usdailyreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter.
The city